Hello, everyone. This is Fernando with Next Trend Realty. Thank you for joining my webinar. Today, we're going to be focusing on the NAR settlement and other concerns and the conversation about compensation between buyers and sellers. We had brought this up. We presented this at presentation last Saturday, August 10th, live. But I decided to do another one where for the agents that could not attend. So that's why you see two dates, August 10th and August 14th. We are recording this session. Again, my name is Fernando Loero. I'm the Vice President of Training and Mentoring, and welcome to my presentation. So just a little bit of housekeeping and reminders. Make sure you're connected to our Google Chat and our Facebook private group. This is a very helpful mechanism for you to always stay connected with all the agents and the management team, leadership team throughout our real estate work life. You also, again, make sure you attend training courses via webinars or in person, which you're doing now. Another thing that we've been noticing in contract compliance is the submittal of paperwork. There's been a lot of paperwork that's either needs corrections or not turned in time. Then there's a rush to get an approved CDA. Thing that I advise um, is that whenever you have a listing, go ahead and submit it to contract compliance. So like that, we can just review the paperwork, and that way we're not rushing at the final hour trying to get signatures from clients, and then they get upset with you guys. Another thing is whenever you do have an executed contract, make sure you turn it in, all the paperwork within the third day after the option period is over. Then that way we can look at the paperwork. Probably would be a wise thing to do is to do it before the option period is over. That way, if we catch any errors, we can do an amendment. Also, I've been noticing really good activity on the Google chat. There's been questions being posted. Other agents are answering questions. This is very, very helpful for all the agents to provide their questions. And then every agent is an expert in some field. It's not just the same old agents. There are many agents that we have that have plenty of experience who can also answer questions. Again, if you don't have any way of communicating with anybody or you need immediate assistance, you can always ask one of the leadership team members for any assistance. Remember, you're not alone. Okay, so let's get into the webinar. What's the reason for these form changes? What happened? What are the new forms and changes? List of services. I have some handouts that I have that you can work with your sellers and buyers. How do we communicate offers of compensation, the takeaway, and then Q&A. You're always welcome to ask questions. You don't have to wait until I finish talking. So, who to blame? What happened, Fernando? Why are we going through this headache? Well, you can blame it here. The Sitzer and Burnett versus National Association of Realtors case. It was a federal case in Missouri that initiated in March 2024, and it was the home sellers claim real estate commissions were inflated due to the MLS offer of compensation rule. So this whole thing happened here. So if you're upset or you will become upset because of why this major change, you can blame it on these people here, the Sisser and Burnett versus NAR. And I don't know if y'all been noticing, but there's been so many messages every day from NAR or from HAR or from the Texas Realtors, and they're constantly talking about it as far as changes. You also see the pros and cons. You see, you hear things about maybe, I think Colorado doesn't want to force or mandate the buyer rep agreement. So there's just a lot of things happening. So For right now, as far as Texas and as far as our office, Next Trend Realty, we're going to follow the rules. So NAR MLS rules, it's a hard date, August 17th. So that's Saturday, a couple of days from now. And this is everything that's happening. I'm not going to read all of it. You can find all this stuff on the NAR website. The one that I highlighted is the major change, which is the MLS or HAR will eliminate all the broker compensation fields. Some agent called me today and asked me, do they have to do anything on the MLS listing where it doesn't show the commission or the compensation? And I told her no. HAR is actually going to go into the matrix interface and remove the fields. So you're no longer going to see the fields after August 17th. So they're going to disappear. Another thing that you probably notice is they don't want us to use the word commission. They want us to use the word compensation. So throughout all the documentation, now they replace the word commission with compensation. So the new form and changes, all these forms were officially launched on June 24th, a couple of months ago. This is to comply with the NAR's MLS rule changes. So Texas Realtors have updated several forms, and they also created 3 new forms, which I'm going to show one of them in a minute. The old forms will not be available for use, or they haven't been for use since June 24th. Please ensure that you have reviewed and are familiar with these new forms. These new forms, you can find them in zip forms, transaction desk, or Dotloop. Additional forms can be found in this website. If you have any questions regarding these new forms, you can always contact one of us. So several forms that were added or created that were brand new. One of them is the amendment to representation agreement. I sent a reminder today in our chat and email and Facebook where you need to ensure that you have this document in place, signed by your clients. That could be a tenant, that could be a landlord, it could be seller, it could be buyer. And this amendment is just a transition from if you're still using existing old forms. In other words, you signed a listing agreement a couple months ago and you haven't sold the house yet, or you've been working with the buyer for 6 months or something like that. It's mandatory that you do this amendment to representation agreement. So that way you're equipped for being TREC compliant. Now you notice that I put the word temporary. This form will be temporary because right now it's used as a transition from the old document that we used to use to the new document. Eventually it's going to just go away. But that's the reason for the word temporary. Then there's other forms that were updated or added. One's called the short form residential buyer tenant agreement. Another was a residential representation agreement. Another ones were updated broker compensation agreements, and so on and so forth. So the amendment to representation agreement, as I mentioned, is a transition for the representation agreements, and it will make us to be compliant with the NAR settlement going forward. We need to ensure that we are ready for this by August 17th rollout. This amendment is for all listing agreements, the TXR 1101, 1102, 1201, the buyer tenant representation agreement, 1501. So it's best to go into your loops, your zip forms, your transaction desk, and ensure that you're TREC compliant. I'm sure there's going to be some kind of auditing process to ensure that we have this done. I don't know, maybe Mary and Ali can bring what might be a fine, but I'm sure that they're going to be really hard on us to ensure that we are chart compliant. So here's the actual form that it looks like, the Amendment to Representation Agreement. It's pretty simple form. The first field is on or about. Client and broker enter into this Texas Realtors Representation Agreement. So this is just, you know, on or about is just, oh, I think it was in May of this year. I think it was in February. But you can also go to your .loop or transaction desk or zip forms and actually go and see when that listing agreement or buyer rep agreement was signed. Then the next one is effective date. So that would be, for example, if we're updating all the forms today, you would put today's date. Okay. Then you have for listing agreements, paragraph B, client means the seller or landlord concerning the following property. So there you would put the actual address. You don't have to put an address for the buyer tenant representation agreement. It's just making it TREC compliant. And then you have to sign it. So broker's printed name, that's not Miriam's name. That's NexTrend Realty's name. And then the license number is 9012456. So please do not put Miriam's name on there. She is our broker, but they're referring to the actual broker company name. So it'll be NexTrend Realty. And then make sure you select the little box down here that says or broker's associate. You guys are considered a broker's associate. If you forget to check the little box down here, then they think you're the brokers. So, okay. These are all the forms that have been either with changes or new forms. There's a list. As you can tell, they have like exclusive right to sell, to lease, amendment to listings, buyer representation agreements, general information notice to buyer, and then the brand new forms on the bottom. You can see those. The reason for the changes of the existing forms is because of the word commission. Now the word is compensation. They also move things around within the forms. So I would advise you guys to become acclimated to the new form and ensure that you can kind of understand what the changes are. Again, we can help you. I can help you. Ali can help you. Miriam can help you. We also have mentors that can help you as well. So, inquiring minds want to know. So here's some questions. On the right-hand side, you'll see that I have Columbo. He's one of my favorite detectives. And he used to say, just one more thing. So what are the questions that may come about? And, you know, it's an inquiring mind wants to know. In the buyer agreement, can buyers and buyer brokers agree to a range of compensation? Well, that's been X'd out. So the answer is no. So for example, a written buyer agreement cannot have a commission that is something like buyer broker compensation shall be whatever amount that the seller is offering to the buyer, or between X and Y%. That's no longer existent. We can't do that anymore. It has to actually be a percent or a flat fee or something. So for example, if the seller says, oh, I'm only going to pay $5,000, then that's what you put. Okay. If the seller says, I'm going to only pay 3% commission, then that's what you put. Seller says, I'm going to only pay 1.5% commission, that's what you put. You can't do ranges anymore. Okay. What does it mean to tour a home? You've been hearing that in some of the videos, and they've been posting about that. Before you tour, you have a buyer tour a home, they have to have a buyer representation agreement. What does it mean by touring a home? Well, I have the definition here. Touring a home means when the buyer, uh, at the direction of the MLS participant working with the buyer, enter the house. This includes working with buyers either through a live or virtual tour. Um, virtual being that they're not physically there. Either way, you need a buyer rep agreement. So, what's a home? A home means a residential property consisting of not less than one, no more than four residential dwellings. So it's the 1 to 4. As you can tell that if you had your question about is this affected with commercial transactions? Well, the answer is no. Commercial is not involved in this lawsuit. So that's why here they have it stressed with 1 or 4 residential dwellings. If it's a 5 or 6 or 7 plus, then it's considered commercial. Can a listing broker explain to a seller that the buyer will know who's paying the commission? Yes. Article 2 and 12 of the NAR Code of Ethics apply equally to brokers working with these sellers. A listing broker should inform the seller about costs the buyer will incur, because usually sellers are not aware. And that's one of the reasons for the lawsuit too, is because they were like, why is the buyer agent getting 3%? Things like that. Or why can't the buyer not pay for compensation? Well, there's a lot of incurred costs that the buyer receives. And so it would be very helpful, you as a listing agent, to provide the seller with, hey, by the way, this is typical charges that a buyer incurs. And that way the buyer can understand the entire offer that they receive. Another thing that's come about is, well, buyer agents are going to go, oh, okay, Mr. Buyer, we sent you a list of 10 houses and one of them is not paying commission. Is what the buyer notices. The buyer agent notices. And the buyer agent says, oh, I'm not going to show that house. I'm only going to show the 9 houses. Well, that's called steering, right? And we're not allowed to do that. Code of ethics. But again, as listing agents, we need to state to the seller that that's not going to be happening. Of course, I have this strong feeling it might. Hopefully, none of the realtors do this. What happens, Fernando, if we're doing an open house? Do we have to do a buyer rep agreement signed by a prospect every time they enter our open house? No. In this case, no. And the reason why is because you're really working for the seller, okay, not the buyer at this point, because you're doing the open house for the seller. Now, if the buyer says, hey, I want to submit an offer, I want you to show me another house next door, then you need a buyer rep agreement and an IBS, information about broker services. In that case, then you would immediately have to do a buyer rep agreement. I would suggest you printing out the IBS and the buyer rep agreement, keep them in your car just in case that happens, especially if you're doing a lot of open houses. Okay. So communication offers of compensation. There's a variety of ways to negotiate and how we communicate offers. Here I have 5 bullets. One is marketing. We need to tell the seller that we're going to be marketing their house. We're going to post it on hard.com. It's going to go to Zillow. We're going to take pictures. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. So there's a process that we need to ensure that the seller is aware of where our expenses are. Okay. We create flyers. We put a sign. We do a lot of emails, such and such. We can, which is very helpful for us, is a broker can show offers of compensation for their listings on their own website. So I know there's several of us that have websites, and sometimes we'll post a premiere house or something. We could put in there, oh, seller offering, compensation, to buyer agents, because we're not using the MLS. This is using our own website. So that's really helpful. And I'm glad that they allowed for that. Also, seller's concessions. Seller can continue to offer these concessions. This could be towards buyer closing costs, or it could be the compensation of the buyer's agent as well. So that's still going to be there. Also, we tell the sellers and buyers that we help them with negotiations. And especially we're working with the buyer, we can say things like, hey, we'll submit this offer, and I'm also going to be negotiating my compensation as part of the terms of the purchase offer. So we can educate our buyers that way. Again, the buyer agreement is mandatory before touring a home. And also this buyer agreement also talks about how we're getting compensated. So I have some handouts, and by the way, I'm going to be posting all this on our Google Share Drive, so you can have it. But for example, here is one for the seller, and and I have something that says to justify a 6% commission, you'll need to offer comprehensive ranges of services. So you can use this as an example to create your own listing presentation, or however you speak to your sellers. But I have things that are in categories like pre-listing services and what is provided in that. And then I have something called marketing services and what's provided in that activity. Then we have print marketing, and so on and so forth. Also, we're going to be conducting open houses for your listings, Mr. Seller, and how all the activities for that. We're going to help with the negotiations and sales. We're going to pre-qualify the buyers by screening and pre-qualify potential buyers, probably through a mechanism of the pre-approval letter. And as you're aware, as listing agents, even buyer agents, we can contact a lender to ensure that everything looks pretty strong for that buyer. Working on counter offers, transaction coordination, post-sale services. So as you can see, if we're trying to assess how we justify the 6% compensation, here's a list of services that we can provide and to our seller, so like that they can go, oh wow, you guys do a lot of things. Because keep in mind, I have heard in the past that sellers and buyers, they don't really know what we do. They have no clue what we do. They think that we just sit in our desks or in our cars and just wait for somebody to show up to buy the house. But when you do when you do these activities and you show them, they're like, wow, that's quite a bit. The other one is, I have one for the buyers. If you're offering premium service for buyers, especially if you're going to ask them to pay you the compensation of 3% or 1% or 2%, you can do these kind of services, buyer's consultation, financial assistance. Of course, this doesn't mean that you're going to be the lender. It's just helping them get, find a lender or several lenders. You help with the custom home search, so you can provide a MLS listing of the properties that they're interested in, neighborhood research, property tours. So there's quite a bit of activity that we do. During the purchase services, we run CMAs for the buyers, offer preparation and presentation, prepare and submit the offer, negotiation services, inspection coordination, contract management, due diligence assistance, and then the closing, final walkthrough, and closing coordination. As you can see, back in the old days when I started a long time ago, we never had to prove to buyers anything like this. We never had to tell them what we really did. Because since the buyers weren't paying the commission or compensation, they knew that it was being paid by the seller, we, and it's almost like we had free reign, you know. But now we have a list that you can use. This is not a list that, you know, it's cannot be modified. You guys can use this list and then create your own style. I know, like Daniel Enriquez, he has a buyer presentation or buyer consultation that he processes, that he has. So this is just something that you can use as a guide. And again, we'll be posting these on our shared drive. Okay, I'm at a pause point before I continue. Is there any questions? Again, if you want to ask a question, make sure you unmute your device. Okay, so let's proceed. So talking to consumers, you always have to, now we used to not do this, but after the 17th of August, we're going to have to, is we need to communicate value. When talking to consumers, you know, we tell them how we, this is a reducing their stress, because usually when I talk to buyers and sellers, I usually tell them, let me worry about the house. You just go, you know, work on your family, you know, spend time with your families, go to work. Let me handle the rest, you know, reducing their stress level. Also, we're a trusted advisor throughout the transaction. And we educate them in the home buying or selling process. And then we work on navigating difficult negotiations. I, as a mentor, I tell my students is you need to learn how to problem solve, because there's a lot of there's a lot of agents out there, but not all agents know how to problem solve, and so that's very important, and that's will make it different from versus other agents that are out there. You have a duty under the Code of Ethics to have open and honest conversation with consumers throughout the home buying and selling process. So some takeaways. Again, June 24th, that's when all the vendors, .loop, zip forms, transaction desk updated all the latest forms. I personally updated everything. So every time you create a brand new loop, I did not touch transaction desk or zip forms, but in .loop, I have admin privileges, and I updated all the loops with the current latest, or ensured that they were there, the current and latest, greatest. But if you have an existing template from the past, .loop, I mean, .loop, yeah, .loop will not go inside your .loop and fix it. So you have to refresh it by grabbing the original, I mean, the new forms and adding it to your existing loop. So let me repeat that again. .loop will not update itself on your existing loops. So if you created a loop in May, you probably still have the old document. It's not going to go in there and fix it for you or replace it. You would have to go back into your loop. You don't have to create a brand new loop, but go back into your loop, and you can go to templates, the ones that I've created or Next Gen Realty created, and go in there and then grab the one that you're looking for. Okay. Another thing is that I've learned, and we've learned, the management team, is TREC contracts are not changing at this time. They're just saying it's going to be updated at a later date. So we don't know when that's going to happen. Again, buyer agents must have a buyer rep agreement before touring a home in person or virtual showings. So that's mandatory. Again, if for some reason it's August 17 or August 18, and somebody says, hey, can you show me a house right now? And you're like, sure. You need to, before showing that house, you have to have a buyer rep agreement signed. So that's why I suggest you print them out, put them in a file, in a folder, and leave them in your car. If you have 3 cars in your family, then have a folder for each one of them. Okay, because we can get in big trouble. Because this is part of the NAR settlement, and I'm sure there's going to be watchers out there that are going to be looking for us to make a mistake so they can do a lawsuit, and we do not want lawsuits. Okay. Let's see what else. Yeah, so our compliance department will require these new forms for all files after August 17th. One thing that you guys are going to experience is whenever you submit a file to Contra Compliance and we say, oh, you're using the wrong form. And we're going to look for the amendment to representation. We're going to look for these other forms. We're going to tell you that it's no longer TREC compliant and you're going to have to fix it. And your clients are going to be very upset with you because now they're like, now what? We have to sign another document again? So please, please make sure that you have the latest and greatest. If you have no idea what the latest and greatest is, contact me, Ali, Miriam, whoever it is. Okay? All right. So one strong message that I want you to have in your mind and engraved in your mind is the following. And this is what they added in pretty much every single document that has changed. And I think this is part of the NAR settlement, the lawsuit. Broker compensation, or the sharing of compensation between brokers, is not set by law, nor fixed, nor controlled, recommended, or suggested by the Association of Realtors, MLS, or any listing service. Broker compensation is fully negotiable. Broker independently determines their fees. So whenever if a buyer, seller, tenant, landlord is asking you questions about this NAR settlement, always start off with broker compensation has always been fully negotiable. However, now these documents now specify the actual percent or dollar value of our compensation. And you can always repeat it. Broker compensation is always fully negotiable. Okay. Just some contact numbers. If you have any questions or like you're still not sure about the NAR settlement, you can always contact me, Ali, Miriam. There's all send emails. We're here to help you, guide you, and keep you out of trouble. Yeah, that wraps up my presentation. Now we can have any questions if anybody has any. And ensure that your devices are on mute. Unmute.
Fernando?
Yes, who's this?
It's Roxanne.
Oh, hello, Roxanne. Yes, ma'am.
So I have a question. So we have to have the buyer representation filled out prior to any showing, and the buyer representation has a field that we have to fill out regarding compensation. So let's say with our client, our buyers are only wanting to do a flat fee of $3,000, and that's what we put in there, right? But
correct.
The seller will give compensation to buyer's agent. So at that point, once we find that out, because I mean, we don't know what the 3% will be, what house they're going to choose or anything, because that's down the road. So is it okay if we change it later, or how does that work?
Yes. So the way it's been working is that we're probably going to be using the amendment to the buyer rep agreement quite often.
Okay.
Because, and let me give you an example. So here's a copy of. Can you guys see this? Okay. Yeah. So let me give you a scenario. So let's just say that the seller is paying us a flat fee, right? And that would go right here in this box. And they're paying us a flat fee of the buyer wants to pay us a flat fee of $3,000, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now here is just saying that the buyer is agreeing that you will receive 3,000. Okay.
Mhm.
And I think I need to kind of think about this a little bit, but you're saying if the seller decides to pay the 3,000, or the seller decides to pay some kind of commission,
Correct.
we need to change this.
hmm
Okay.
Because prior to showing, when we first meet these buyers, and we get them to sign this agreement, maybe they haven't even been pre-qualified, or they're sometimes buyers are like, I only want to buy a house for 300,000, but they see that everything isn't in that 3,000, so now they want to go up to 4,000, and your seller is going to offer 3%. They're still offering the 3%. Well, that's a lot more than 3,000. So I'm just
Exactly.
thinking, how are
Yeah.
we going to navigate that?
Yeah, and by using this amendment to buyer tenant representation agreement, we have to use this constantly. So you may have, if you show 10 houses and you're doing multiple offers, and you may have 10 amendments, right? Now, what I would do is, yeah. So whenever we talk to a seller or a listing agent, we need to know if we're getting a compensation or not, right?
Yes.
And then they go, oh, it depends on the offer. And let's just say, hey, we're going to offer X, Y, Z. And then the seller says, yep, I'm good with the 3% compensation. Then, and it's not in here, it says 3,000. We're going to have to do an amendment.
Okay.
Yeah. Another thing, I'm glad you brought this up. Another thing is the BTSAs. BTSA stands for bonus to sales agent. And usually builders offer BTSAs, bonus to sales agent. We need to do that in here, and we need to actually specify how much we're getting for the BTSA. It cannot be a percent. It has to be a whole number.
Okay.
And you can tell when it's a whole number and when it's a percent. If you look at paragraph 1, it says purchases, it has a percent sign. Or it has the word or, it's got a dollar sign. That means you have either choice. When you see another field that only has a dollar sign, you cannot use a percent. You have to use a calculator.
So basically, Fernando, whenever they are putting an offer, they can change this one based on their offer. And then
Exactly.
if their offer doesn't go through, this one becomes voided and they're going to do another one.
They just got to keep on, yeah. And also, if they're working with builders, and the builder says, hey, I'm offering 1%, because builders always do use percentage. I'm offering 1% to a BTSA. We cannot put 1% here. We have to actually use a calculator and put what the amount is and what the address of the property is.
I wish we could do TBD, to be determined.
Yeah, and that's what, in my presentation, that's why I said you can't do that anymore. Because remember on the presentation, I said that it can't be...
to be determined.
Yeah.
It has to be exact.
Yeah.
They should know what they're
like
paying.
right here, it says, buyer broker compensation shall be whatever amount. We can't do that. Between X and Y, we can't do none of that stuff. So if for some reason we do not, if we're getting a bonus and we forget to do an amendment, we will not be able to get the bonus because it has to be approved by a buyer.
Wow.
Sorry for the bad news. Any other good questions?
Can you say that last part one more time, Fernando?
Sure. if the seller or new build or whoever is offering a BTSA, a bonus to sales agent, and we forget as buyer agents to do an amendment called Amendment to Buyer Tenant Representation Agreement, and we forget to fill out box E, we will not be allowed to receive that money.
Okay.
Here it says, in addition to broker's fees, broker will receive other compensation from seller, landlord, or their agent in an amount equal to, and we have to list what address it is. So I know there's going to be a lot of agents getting very upset and calling our office going, hey, where's my $1,000 bonus? And the first thing contract compliance is going to do is we're going to go into your dot loop or transaction desk or zip forms, and we're going to be looking for this form. And we're going to go, amendment to buyer tenant. Oh, you forgot to put it in here.
But if they find out that they forgot before closing, they can get it signed and they can get their money from the buyer.
Yeah, let's hope there's no Karen. Yeah.
Some of the buyers, they don't like that you receive more bonus.
Yeah.
Can you
And I've seen it happen before, because it's happened to me, where the buyer finds out that I'm getting a BTSA and they go, Fernando, can I have it? And if you forgot to do this in the beginning, right, because you knew about it, and then like Ali says, 1 day or 2 days before closing, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that Lennar's offering me $1,000. Let me rush this form and get it signed so I can send it to contract compliance so we can, they can approve my CDA. And then the buyer goes, what? You're getting what? $1,000? Oh, can I have it? Because I want to buy some curtains.
I would say that is only for the realtors, and if you want to get it, you should go. You would definitely can get it, but go get your license. So for your next deal, I'm going to share it. It's very expensive. You have to pay monthly, and also the brokerage fees and everything else. Are you interested?
Yeah. So the whole bottom line is, guys, is now everything has to be in black and white of what compensation you're receiving. There's no more vague. There's no more range. There's no more between. All that is out the door. And yes, you have to do 20 amendments every time there's a change. There's more paperwork for us. Sorry to give you that bad news. And if you want to blame somebody, here it is right here. I can give you their phone numbers. Not just kidding. This is the reason. Any other questions? Another thing is if you have any buyer representation agreements, listing agreement, well, it's not another thing, it's a reminder. Please make sure you do that form and before August 17th.
I have one other question.
Yeah, go ahead.
For the showings, are we still doing the short forms or the long forms?
So our leadership team has been thinking about that, and we really don't want to use the short form. Well, the short form has two purposes, right? It's got let me see if I can look at it. The short form has two purposes. One is just for opening the door, right?
Right.
And you charge a fee. And then they have another part that's for like a mini buyer rep agreement. And one thing that the management team was looking at is that the buyer rep agreement, the long form kind of protects us a lot more, right? Because there's like 5 pages long,
Mm-hmm.
but the short one doesn't. The short one, I think, is only 1 page, I think.
Right.
And so, and this is good. This would be very helpful for you guys too. Is how do y'all feel about, 99% of the time should be the buyer rep agreement long form, and then the short form should be sort of like a unique basis or something. The way I see a short form is I'm doing an open house and somebody says, hey, can you show me the house next door? And tell me a little bit about it and how to negotiate and all that. And I go, yeah, sure. I would, in that situation, I probably would do, oh, and then they tell you, but I only want to use you for the house next door.
Right.
And that's it, and then they go, sure. And I would probably use a short form in that scenario because you're only doing it. And then the term is going to be like, 1 day,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not charging them to open the door because they want to talk to you a little bit about the house and how should they negotiate. So there's this educational process. So in that case, I think I would use a short form.
Okay.
And then they go, thank you, Fernando. I appreciate it. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Feliz Navidad. And then you never see them again. But if they say, hey, I want you to show me 10 houses per weekend, I would use probably the long form.
Okay. And in the case of the short form, where are they sending their payments to? Have we decided on that?
Well, for right now, everything should go to admin email anyway. And when you send it to admin, I'm watching, Ali's watching, Miriam's watching, so we're all looking at admin anyway. And we'll look at the form that you're filling out. But for right now, let's just send it there. Another thing that we don't have an answer to is how much should we, if we charge to open the door, how much should we charge? We're still not kind of puzzled with that. We thought $25 a door. Others have said $50 a door. I mean, and then another thing, the headache is that the buyer has to send us a payment of those $25, and they have to send it to NextTrend Realty because you're not allowed to receive money.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's what I was asking. Where do
Yeah, and then NextTrend Realty has to give you the $25 back. But then what about our processing fee or admin fee, right? Because nothing's free in this world.
Right.
So you get, you charge 25 and we give you back $12.50. It's just like, what do we do here?
Right.
Because everything, like I said, everything's money. If you guys have ideas that we can do regarding that, I'm kind of glad that we can charge now. I'm kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe $50, and then NextTrend Realty gets $10, and you guys keep 40. I don't know. It's just a lot of. We don't have nothing in. We haven't even thought about it. It's just another thing that I was in Detroit, Michigan. Well, we all went for a training for the loans, and I don't know if you guys know how I am, but I talked to everybody, and I had like 10 agents from all the other brokerages, and we were all talking because it was on break. And I asked them the question. I said, hey guys, are y'all prepared for the NAR settlement? And do you know that everybody was in silence? I said, what are y'all brokers doing? What have they told y'all? And they're like, nothing. I said, nothing? No education, no training, no webinars? They go, no. I said, well, what are y'all doing about the door thing? They go, we don't know how much to charge, Fernando. I said, what do y'all think about $25 a door? They're like, oh, that sounds pretty good. I said, what about $50 a door? They're like, oh, that sounds even better. I said, so none of y'all from eXp Realty, Remax, Century 21, KW, Keller Williams, none of y'all have anything to tell me or suggest? And they're like, no. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. Nobody knows anything. So my point is, this is all new to us. It's a lot of headaches. I don't know what to tell you. So we need everybody's input. Is my point. We need everybody's input. Right now, let's just focus on being TREC compliant. Let's ensure that we all have the buyer rep agreement signed before touring a house. And then I need to think about the short form. And I'm welcome everybody's input, please. This is not just Ali's problem, Miriam problem, Fernando problem. It's all our problems. And we need to, and I want all of us to have the same message. Okay, but good questions, guys. Anything else? Are we excited about the buyer rep agreement? Then you hear nothing.
No.
Hey, and another,
So we're
and,
not.
and funny, I've been a realtor 18 years. I've never had to do a buyer rep agreement. You know?
Wow.
Well, I mean, I started doing it like recently when I was at another broker, but for a while, I mean, for 12 years, I didn't have any buyer rep agreement. It was like, even my original broker used to say, "Oh, we don't need a buyer rep agreement." He goes, "It's useless," is what he used to say. But yeah, we have to follow this. And like I said, I know there's going to be auditors out there watching every single brokerage, so like that they can make their own little money in lawsuits, and they're going to be the Karens of the world. Excuse me if anybody's named Karen right now. But it is what it is, like they said. Anything else, guys? I know it's already getting late. We're almost at the hour. I really appreciate everybody's time. I'm going to turn off the recording, and then if anybody wants to stay and vent, they're more than welcome to vent.